The Community Preservation Act is a ballot question number 4 that's now on the ballot when you receive it this fall. And what a yes vote, as we were proposing, as you vote, it will establish funds for dedicated specifically for recreation, open space, historic preservation, and affordable housing. And we were proposing to this question that it will be adopted with local funding of 1% on the real estate tax bill, and including the allowable exemptions per legislation. And if there's a decision later down, years from now, or folks want to adjust or revoke the question, it can be done by a future town meeting along with a ballot referendum. In terms of project opportunities with CPA funds, and the category of recreation specifically, we're already aware of the need to rehabilitate our overdue school and neighborhood playgrounds, including to make them ADA compliant. We're aware of the need to rehabilitate our existing softball, baseball, and lacrosse fields, including adding irrigation, shade shelters, and lighting. And finally, some folks in our community would like to see additional walking and bike trails, especially to make them more unified so that the rides and the walks are longer and more enjoyable. In the category of open space, we are aware of the need to restore ponds and lakes plagued with invasive weeds. We have the need to acquire land that impacts the public water supply. And in the future, we could acquire properties if they come up for sale that fit into our town's strategic plans for open space and recreation. In the category of historic preservation, we could be preserving qualifying historic buildings and artifacts. We're aware of the need to restore our historic gravestones in the center of town. And we're also aware of the need to preserve and digitize our historical town records to make them also available online. And finally, in the category of affordable housing, we could be using CPA monies to create low-income senior or veteran housing as an example. Or we could also acquire and repurpose historic structures for use as affordable housing units in our community. In general, what can CPA fund? The legislation specifically calls out action verbs, which are left on the left-hand side of this presentation. You can see that we can acquire, create, preserve, support, or rehabilitate and or restore along the categories of open space, recreation, historic preservation, and affordable housing. Where you see the green check marks is where we can use CPA funds for those projects. Now, CPA isn't new. It's been around since 2000, and since then, 177 communities, or over half of Massachusetts, has adopted CPA, including comparable towns, notably our neighbors Northborough, Southborough, West Boylston, and Grafton. And we also have a number of communities that are going to the ballot as well, along with Shrewsbury, including Franklin and Framingham. So certainly a lot of activity going on for the 2020 election, including our vote, question number 4. And so how is the Community Preservation Fund actually funded? It's again through that local surcharge of 1% on the real estate tax bill. Now the legislation does allow up to 3%, but our proposal is 1%, and that's what's going to be on your ballot question. And by adopting CPA, we will be unlocking matching state funds. Communities that adopt CPA will receive a variable annual matching distribution from the statewide Community Preservation Trust Fund. So that's state monies being unlocked by adopting CPA with a yes vote. And we have already been paying into this statewide trust fund through transactions at the Registry of Deeds without getting any of the benefits. So again, voting yes on question 4 is going to unlock those state funds. In terms of the cost of to property owners, the chart before you is giving you examples along the property values. Right in the middle there is the average single family property value coming in at $478,000. And that property would be assessed a $47.21 annual surcharge. And that's, again, annual. So if you look at it from a quarterly perspective, that's $12 per quarter. There are a number of exceptions, so that exemptions, I should say. Folks that are low-income property owners or moderate to low to moderate income senior property owners, if they are qualified based on these income limits, as you see on screen, and they apply annually, they could be exempt from the CPA surcharge. And existing tax exemptions are not impacted. So just to recap on the revenues from CPA, we would add the local receipts, that's that 1% on your tax bill, plus the annual variable match from the state. Together, we put that together, and that's the pot of money that's going to be available for CPA projects in Shrewsbury. 1% charge alone would raise $600,000 annually, and again, plus the state match. And a yes vote for CPA will enable Shrewsbury to receive that state match. So that's why we need to say yes on question 4. Now, we'll talk about the state monies. What does that look like? How much does it come in? When we look at our neighbors and to see how much they've received, communities that have adopted CPA, it can add up. This chart shows us a progression going back in time for these towns adopted it. If we look at Norwood, you can see that they adopted in 2018, and they've already received from the state $261,000 so far. Canton at $250,000 back since 2014. Hudson, 1.4 million. Northborough, adopted in 2006, they've received $2.3 million. That is no small change. That can do a lot of good and has done a lot of good in Northborough, and we want to see things like that happen in Shrewsbury. You can see that Shrewsbury has not received any money. Coming on the far left there with $0. Now, just to note, if CPA had been adopted in the past, we could have seen $140,000 coming from the state in fiscal year 20. So these monies do add up over time, and we want to put that state money to good use right here in Shrewsbury. Now, in terms of the project approval process, projects can be raised basically from community groups, residents, town departments. That's basically everyone in Shrewsbury who has an interest in a project being done in our town. And they will formalize it through a document and through write-ups that will be very clear and transparent. Those project proposals will go to a new committee that will be formed after the election, and it will be called the Community Preservation Committee. And that body will provide us with local control of these projects. They will review the projects to make sure they fit along the use case, that table that I showed earlier. And then they will bring it to town meeting for approval. And along the way, it does go through the usual checks of the Finance Committee review and the Board of Selectmen recommendation as well. So it is a new committee, but it's going to feel the same way, and it still have the checks and balances that we've come to enjoy. Now, in terms of that committee, just very briefly on that, it's going to be a 9-member board. There's some statutory members per the legislation, making up members across existing commissions and boards that are in our town. And then there's going to be optional 4 members that will be defined after election through a bylaw that the members of the town meeting will approve on. And the charge of that CPC, this new committee, is to conduct an annual needs assessment for community preservation, which will drive their project making decisions. In summary, CPA was enacted in 2000 and continues to pay out. CPA enables us to follow through on strategic plans and community-sourced priorities already documented through open space and recreation plans, master plans, and housing production plans. And in terms of effective date, this will go into effect on July 1st, 2021, next year, and hopefully well after the effects of COVID have passed through our community. And finally, we respectfully ask that you vote yes on question 4 this fall.
Not only am I on the town's Conservation Commission, but I am also helping with the current open space and recreation plan, which we are set to finalize in about a month or so. So we've been privy to a lot of public discussion and hearing the ideas of Shrewsbury townspeople about the need for open space. And I think with the pandemic this spring, we have seen our open spaces be used so heavily and really, really appreciated. And this just seems like the perfect time to really think about how we can continue to protect that open space. And the CPA is a fantastic tool for doing that. If you go anywhere in Shrewsbury, I think you'll see that there are these big expanses of green space that really are part of the fabric of our town. That includes places like Ski Ward, that includes places like if you drive down Maple Ave, you've got the foundation fields, and then you have the foundation itself. Any road that you go down in Shrewsbury will have these open spaces. South Street, Green Street, the agricultural fields down there. Some of those are protected, but some of them are not. And I think it's foolish for us to think that they will continue to be open spaces if we don't pay attention and do something to protect them. Shrewsbury has a lot of small open spaces too, but people don't necessarily know about them because they're hard to get to. They have maybe one or two properties that you can use to access them. In some cases, that access is through a wetland, like at Eaton Pond. In some cases, there's very little parking, like at Camp Wanigan on Grafton Street, or the Carlstrom forest lands off of Gulf Street. Small streets, hard to get to, safety issues for getting into them and enjoying them. This tool, CPA, is a way for us to have funding to address all of those problems. And even in the open space planning meetings, we are hearing that what we need to do in the master plan is we need to fundraise. We have a goal to raise non-municipal funding by 20% in the next 5 years. Well, guess what? This is our tool. We have it at our hands right now. So if the town can pass this, if voters get behind this, and we can pass this, for less than a cup of coffee twice a week, we can afford CPA on our budget. This is a must-do, a must-have, and I'm fully behind it.
Yes, I've been a resident of Shrewsbury for over 30 years now. I've raised my 3 kids here. Watched this town grow very rapidly and filling in spaces and growing from homes and residences, subdivisions to plazas. And I'd like to see more park space. And I think that it's really important to preserve what open space we do have. And I also like a bargain. And I think for the average amount of $47 a year, I have an average home, it makes economic sense. I'm going to get a lot back. I'm going to leverage money from the state. And I really like that. I've watched other towns do this since the early 2000s, and the amount of money that they've gotten, I really am disappointed that Shrewsbury hasn't been able to leverage that. So I just want to talk a little bit about Shrewsbury's lakes and ponds. We're very blessed with a lot of water in Shrewsbury. Obviously, we have Lake Quinsigamon. You know, it's a flagship lake for rowing and sailing, all kinds of boating. There's kayakers and stand-up paddle boarders, you know, from dusk to dawn and even after dark. It's very, very highly used. It has 2 state parks, but we also have water access on the Shrewsbury side. We have a small park called Gach Park on the north end of the lake that is very heavily used for fishing. Many fishermen are there at all times of the day. We have Dean Park Pond, Jordan Pond, Flint Pond, and Newton Pond. All of these have access. Shrewsbury residents can access at locations. Dean Park Pond and Jordan Pond have both been experiencing some bacteria issues, primarily due to the heavy bird populations. But it's made those water bodies off limits for significant parts of the summer. Shrewsbury residents, you know, they use the lake. They use all of our lakes They like to just watch birds, but they're recreating. But there's more space that we could utilize. For example, Oak Island is a significant parcel of land that Shrewsbury owns right now. And there's a lot of people that do use it, but it needs more. It needs benches, it needs porta potties and regular garbage pickup. It needs some supervision so that people can access the water safely. These are some of the kinds of things that we could, with CPA funds, we could advance those parks there. We often hear how people want to access the water locally. They don't want to have to drive far. They see Lake Quinsigamon, Flint Pond, and they want to be able to use it. We recently have added Newton Pond to the Lake Quinsigamon Commission purview. Flint Pond, Newton Pond, and Lake Quinsigamon are battling invasive weeds, and that's causing a lot of problems with boating access, with swimming, and we also have the Asian clam now. So we need to continue to fight additional invasive aquatic vegetation and animals coming to the lake. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. There's a lot of support that these water bodies need. I think that's about all I had to say. So thank you very much for letting me speak.
The reason I'm involved with CPA is the same reason I decided to get involved with the Shrewsbury Housing Authority. As a residential real estate agent, I noticed a lot of people, a lot of our seniors raised their family in town, grew up in town, and then they can't afford to stay here. And I think that is a huge concern for us. We need to be able to provide home for our seniors so that they can stay. And this also helps with our younger folks. If the seniors are able to sell their home and then be able to purchase something a little bit more affordable that works better for them, that opens up our community to our children that want to come back to Shrewsbury, want to live in Shrewsbury, but can't afford to do it. In 2019, the average cost of the home in Shrewsbury was $485,000. That's a lot of money for someone starting out or someone who's retired. And this, right now, if someone wanted to buy a home in Shrewsbury tonight, the average sale price is over $700,000. That's just staggering. We can't continue our community if we can only, if the average price is $700,000. So that's a big reason I got involved. Another reason is the 40B requirement. Shrewsbury currently, the state requires that we have 10% affordable housing. We currently have 6.3% affordable housing. So if we were to vote yes on ballot question number 4 and enact CPA to begin next July, will we solve that overnight? No, but we will be able to make a dent towards it. And then we are more in control of big subdivisions coming to town, and we're not going to be mandated by the state on who's going to build in town. And perhaps the worst thing that could happen is they take up our green space to build more $700,000 homes. So those are some of the reasons I got involved, both with my housing authority hat and my residential real estate hat. I think that the key here is to vote yes on ballot question 4 and promote affordable housing for our residents.
So I got involved in this through having friends in Northborough who were involved in CPA projects, and I began to see from the inside just how useful this can be for a town. They were making tremendous progress in Northborough. And when we started the Trails Committee in Shrewsbury, this was in 2012, we realized quickly that there was no money in the budget for trails. There's just no money. They help out a little bit, but there's no money. So trails is one of my interests, and we did the best we always do the best we can with volunteers, but it would really be nice to have a little money. Sometimes you just need some boards for a bridge or something, and we're dipping into our own pockets an awful lot. Anyway, I'm also interested in the other 3 aspects of it: the open space, the affordable housing, and the historic preservation. Those are all things that are dear to my heart, and I would like to see this all come about. Now, I'm here specifically to talk to you about parks today. We have quite a few parks in town. I counted a list of 18 or 19 of them, and many of them are not known to everyone, but I think mostly people know Dean Park, and it's adequately maintained and fairly tidy and everything, but it's clear that it needs a new playground, and there are various refurbishments that really would be very handy to have. My grandchildren live in Medway, and they have the most spectacular playgrounds. They have CPA that you could ever hope to have. One of the things that they have that I would love to see here is a splash pad. When the little kids are running through that spray, it's really heartwarming, and it's wonderful for the kids, and it's wonderful for the grandparents who bring them. So I would like to see that. In addition, there are all kinds of amenities that we could use. There's extra seating around the playing fields with maybe a little shade canopies so people could watch the games in comfort, and in case it starts to rain, whatever. Maybe we could do more with the pond. There's so many towns that have used their water sides as river walks or this or that. I mean, we're not going to be able to do entirely that in Dean Park, but there's got to be some more thought there. Plus, every time a tree falls, it's rarely replaced. So I would like to see some more trees replaced there. Lake Street Park, another one of my favorite parks. There are some very nice trails there, and they could be extended. There's a way we could get all the way to Oak Street, which would open up another access to the park. That would be great. I think we could use some more benches, some more picnic tables, some canopies to help people watch the soccer games there. Prospect Park, another park in town that a lot of people have driven by a million times and never went in. That has a historic aspect to it, and it's also an interesting place to walk. You feel like you're far from everywhere, but you're really in the center of town. And I know there are volunteers working on the old gardens that are the remains of the old mansion that used to be there. And I'm sure that they have plenty of ideas that they could bring to fulfillment with a little CPA money. Now, I'd also like to talk about the little parks in town. And these are the little parks that came with open space requirements for subdivisions. And they are, for the most part, tidy and the grass is mowed. But there's no magic. They are a set of swings, pause, not much else, and a big empty field, and there's just nothing there. I think that these little neighborhood parks could become neighborhood centers. They could be little treasures. New playground equipment, picnic tables, benches, shade structures, lots more trees, imaginative planting that wouldn't require a lot of maintenance. I think these could be neighborhood treasures that would welcome everyone of all ages to come out and have some healthy outdoor exercise and get out in the fresh air. And then it would become a center of the neighborhood in the way that in a city, that a park in the middle of a city becomes identified, the whole neighborhood identifies with the park. And I think that could be the case in our little subdivisions. So that's what I have to say about the parks.
I've been a resident for about 2 decades now, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about historical preservation from a more personal perspective. I think most of us are aware of how many of our structures and homes in Shrewsbury have gone by the wayside. Since the 20 years that I've been here, I've witnessed quite a few. So a little bit more philosophical approach tonight, or today is what I'm going to present to you. People have many reasons for choosing a place to live. And some make that choice because of strong school systems, some because of the parks and the recreation and the trails, other because of the affordability, and many for a combination of things. But I think most people value the concept of a community. And those things that I just mentioned are all part of a vibrant and desirable community. So my story began 2 decades ago when my family moved here from Michigan to Massachusetts. And what brought us here was Shrewsbury's New England charm and historic properties and the rural landscape. And at that time, it was at an affordable price. Along with that, there was a connectability to the major cities and medical institutions, and it seemed like a perfect mix of rural and urban living. My husband, having building and renovation experience, was looking for a fixer-upper. Well, we found it. At that time, there were several options for us, but we were looking for something with some character and a lot of history. And we found it here in Shrewsbury. We found acreage and a barn and a home dating back 200 years, sort of gentleman's farm, which is hard to find nowadays. It called to us and we answered the call. Understanding the importance of honoring the property's past, we approached the renovation with respect of the old and an importance to us to function in the 21st century, and proceeded to make the home a blend of centuries. The history of the property helped guide us in making our decisions. We wanted to learn more, so we joined the Historical Society. And at that time, I served as a director for 3 years, and we were very honored to have received the first Historical Society's Preservation Restoration Award. So the history was important to us, and maintaining as much of it, of the old, and blending in the new was important as well. Nothing stays the same, and we shouldn't expect it to, but we felt we needed to honor what had come before, and while still embracing the necessary contemporary changes that were needed. So where's Shrewsbury in this ongoing historical transitional process? I feel it's experiencing some of what we experienced with our renovation. What should we save? What can go? What's important to maintain the existing character? Much has changed in the 20 years since moving here. Developments have now replaced the farms and rolling acres which once graced the landscape, and structures which have stood for hundreds of years have been replaced with cookie cutter buildings and escalating price tags. We're slowly losing what the pieces of the past that tied us to the future, and Community Preservation Act can slow that process. Preserving historic resources such as buildings, gravestones, stone walls, documents, and artifacts, protecting them and making them accessible for hundreds of years is essential for future generations to understand how our community developed. To quote a political activist, Marcus Garvey, a people without the knowledge of their past and their origin and culture is like a tree without roots. So how do we want to be remembered as a community? The choices we make now reflect what Shrewsbury will be going forward, and we can embrace the future by being stewards of the past. Community Preservation Act helps us to do that. CPA provides the mechanism for us to be a community to collectively decide what is important to preserve. CPA projects are brought forward by those living here, and as stewards, we decide what projects we feel best benefit our community and will maintain a strong historical presence in Shrewsbury. Think of a yes vote for community preservation as planting a tree for future generations and maintaining that historical presence in our community. We needn't lose the character of our town or not be able to preserve the historic resources because of budget restraints or missed opportunities. That's why I felt it was important to get involved with this initiative. Shrewsbury has a rich past which should be preserved, and we can all be part of that process by adopting the Community Preservation Act. And we have to decide how we want our community, how we want our town to look, and what's important to us. And a yes vote on November 3rd on question 4 will help us reach that goal. So I hope we all go out and cast that vote. I'll be there. Thank you.
So how you can help? Certainly we can use a little promotion on social networks and offline networks, promoting a yes on question 4. Also having our committee meet with your groups. If you're a member of a network that would be interested in CPA, certainly let us know about it, and we would love to have a discussion with them, whether socially distant as need be now or online. We would love to talk with your network. You could also help write a letter to the editor and get that in the next few weeks. And also your endorsement of CPA would be most beneficial to folks that know you, would also respect your decision and hopefully vote the same way as well. And then lastly, any campaign like ours needs volunteer support. We're all volunteers and hope that you can also join us in making CPA a reality in Shrewsbury. To reach us, we have a number of ways. Our website, communitypreservationshrewsbury.org. You can follow us on Facebook at CPA Shrewsbury, or Twitter, CPA Shrewsbury. And lastly, you can email us at cpashrewsbury@gmail.com. Thank you.